I'm standing before you today. Very clever, very clever, very clever, very clever, very clever.
Yeah, very clever. That was a heckler when Mark Carney was in Kitchener, Ontario yesterday. And I don't have no idea what the heckler was saying, but it was very clever, very clever. When we come back, how clever is Mark Carney? Well, he's very clever about the ways of the world, and he's very clever about hiding his wealth. When we come back, some more about that. We need political change. But we also need to resolve to resist. Yes, please like this station as soon as you can. It helps us. And share it with your friends and family. Share, share, share. Because we're really concerned that a lot of information on YouTube and Rumble and social media is being suppressed. I am every day. But even people with huge numbers, I think it's the same people getting the same shows because there is a deliberate attempt to put a lid on the information about Mark Carney. The information we're trying to give you on this station, there's an attempt by the government, by the CRTC, by the social media organizations themselves to put a lid on this information. So please like the station, subscribe. We're really close to getting 50,000. That will mean so much to me. It's not 100,000, but 50,000 is good. Appreciate your help. Thank you for watching today. I'm David Krayden, your host. Just realized yesterday I haven't been routinely identifying who I am. You can see my name there, but it's time for the As I See It monologue. You will own nothing and you'll be happy. Read the World Economic Forum website. It's all there. You won't have a house. And forget the T-bone steaks. You can eat the grasshoppers. Eat the bugs and travel. Don't bother to ask. You won't need to go too far anyway in a 15-minute city. There'll be no cars, no planes for long distance travel, at least for you. The elites will continue to jet set around the world to places like Bali for their climate conferences. Let's go to Paris to eat the sumptuous food, drink the finest wines, the best vintages. It will be soylent green for you, but for the very rich who will get richer, total control. That's Mark Carney's vision. Sounds pretty dystopian, doesn't it? But that's where Mark Carney comes from. That's his culture as a globalist, as a WEF founding member, as a United Nations goodwill ambassador for climate change. He's a world banker and a UN envoy, and he's a freeloading bureaucrat who was installed as Prime Minister of Canada in an absurd Liberal Party race that was designed for him to win. Any serious threats to his victory were eliminated. Oh, there was financial issues here, foreign interest. And 2/3 of the party couldn't even vote, by the way, and you know that. They have yet to explain why 2/3 of the Liberal Party couldn't vote. Now he thinks he's going to walk to the same victory in the federal election campaign. This unelected bureaucrat, and that's what Mark Carney is. He's an unelected bureaucrat, is looking for validation. He wants legitimacy. And most of the pollsters are behind him. The mainstream media have so far given him a free ride, but they're beginning to wake up. Have you noticed? And we'll see that in one of the clips today. And they're beginning to wonder, just who is this Mark Carney? Anyway, where did he come from? How much is he worth? Where are his assets hidden? How did he earn his assets? And why did he move his company, Brookfield Assets Management, to New York City before he jumped in the Liberal leadership race? And why did he use Bermuda as a tax haven for that company? You won't believe his answer to that, by the way. You won't believe how he justifies it's okay for me to use Bermuda as a tax haven. Why should I be paying any tax? You can pay the tax. Your corporation can pay the tax. And of course, you can pay the tax individually, and I expect you to pay it. Why did he invest in fossil fuels and pipelines when he told the Trudeau government, don't build any pipelines and go for net zero? Don't discourage the use of fossil fuels. Say we're going to eliminate fossil fuels by 2030, by 2035. We're going to eliminate the gas-powered vehicle. Meanwhile, Mark Carney's in bed with China, and we'll see more of that later, where they're continuing to produce lots of gas-guzzling machines, where they pollute real pollution, not so-called carbon pollution, but real pollution. But you know what? Carney is worse than Justin Trudeau because he is a little more clever about things. He knows how to break the rules. He knows so much more about the world. And let's listen to what Pierre Poilievre has to say about that. I love
the gentleman who's a very informed journalist, whether he knows what Mark Carney's investments are. And he said, no, that's not his fault. That's Mr. Carney's fault. I just point out that it's incredible that even the journalists who follow this stuff very carefully do not know all the conflicts that Mr. Carney admits that he has. Now, he claims that somehow this money gets funneled through a Bermuda tax haven only to come back to Canada. Well, why wouldn't he just leave it in Canada in the first place? If it were going to be taxed in Canada, he wouldn't need to funnel it through Bermuda. I don't know, how many of you funnel your investments through Bermuda before you bring them back to pay taxes? I think the answer is zero. You know, and so Mr. Carney makes these workers who are struggling to pay their bills pay full taxes in Canada while he ships his investments off to Bermuda to dodge his obligations to this country. That's money that should be going in tax revenue to fund our schools and our hospitals, but instead it's going to pad the pockets of millionaires and billionaires like him. He thinks that taxes are just for the little people, not for big shot bankers like him. This is exactly the wrong kind of experience we need in a prime minister, and the worst kinds of conflicts of interest he will use. He says, by the way, he says he knows how the world works.
Teachers, retirees, municipal employees, they pay the taxes on their pension. That's the design. The follow-up is how do I know? I understand how the world works. And
he thinks he knows better than all these hardworking people behind me. I can tell you they know a lot of things that he has no idea about. I'd like to see them. I'd like him to come in here for a day and try to do their jobs. He wouldn't make it through 1 hour. Oui, I will say it. And merci beaucoup. He says he knows how the world works. He knows how to make it work for him and against you. And that is exactly what he will do as Prime Minister.
exactly what he will do as Prime Minister. And we'll listen to Mark Carney, tortuous explanation about why he doesn't have to pay corporate tax. He can send it all to Bermuda. We'll listen to that in a minute. But I saw this poll. Of course, it's Ecos. It's an Ecos poll, and you can just hear, you can just feel the exultation from this polling company, which has always been left of center. It's been stated. It's stated that Frank Graves is clearly left of center, and that's fine. But I just don't trust his polling. But he's got Carney way ahead at 48.3, at 49.6. That's like supermajority territory. Now, do I believe it? I find it hard to believe. I think there's a lot of hype around Mark Carney right now. And I think a lot of what we're seeing from the media, from pollsters, is part of that hype. Let's listen to Mark Carney try to explain why he doesn't have to pay taxes.
The structure of these funds is designed to benefit the pension funds, the Canadian pension funds that invest in them. The Caisse de dépôt, Ontario Teachers is two examples. The beneficiaries of those pension funds, teachers, retirees, municipal employees, they pay the taxes on their pension. That's the design. The follow-up is how do I know? I understand how the world works and the structure works, and have the ability to put in place all of the necessary rules to ensure that the appropriate taxes are paid here in Canada, as is the case in the example that you just gave. The taxes are paid. Ils sont payés ici au Canada. Okay, d'accord. Ensuite.
Hi, Mr. Carney. Tom Parry with CBC. Could I just follow up on that? Could you explain in the case of those Brookfield funds, like what was the argument for registering the funds in Bermuda? Is it ethical to do that? And is it something as Prime Minister that you'd have to crack down on? I'm not sure if it's a problem, but is that something that you'd have to crack down on?
I think the important thing, Tom, is that the flow through of the funds go to Canadian entities who then pay the taxes appropriately.
Oh, I get it. So it's okay. It's okay. You don't need to pay any corporate tax. You expect other corporations to pay taxes, but you don't need to pay any tax because the people are paying the tax who are investing in your company. They're paying your taxes. Oh, I get it, Mark. So it's a one rule for you, but it's a different rule for everybody else. That's exactly what the theme of today's show is. One rule for thee, another rule for me. Or one rule for thee, another rule for he. This is what Mark Carney is all about. So it's okay for him to funnel everything to Bermuda, but do you think I'd get away with that? Now, if you own a business out there, and I'm sure a lot of you are independent business people, even if you're a farmer, you're an independent business person. Do you think for a minute you could funnel all of your income through Bermuda without anybody calling you out? You think CRA would not say, "Hey, how come you're not paying corporate tax in Canada?" But you know what, Mark Carney, he's above the rule, man. He's above the rules because he's a globalist. Hey, come on, get with the program. He's a globalist. He's been there. He's been there. He's done that. He knows. He knows the ways of the world, man. He is so on top of this. He knows the rules. This is why he can't tell you to your face that the rules are different for me than they are for you, but that's exactly what he's saying.
As opposed to taxes being paid multiple times before they get there. So that's how we have the structure. That's the structure that all of our pension funds, par exemple, the Caisse de dépôt, or Ontario Teachers, or OMERS, municipal employees, or all the big pension funds in Canada, which are very successful, which protect union workers in many cases. I'm speaking of union workers today, and supply to them. It's those entities and their employees who are covered. So the structures work for that effect.
What's the advantage, though, of putting it into a place like
it ensures that it's an efficiency of a structure, so that it ensures that the flow through goes to the entities that are resident in the countries.
But is it avoiding tax in any way?
It doesn't avoid tax because the tax is paid in, for example, the examples all I gave, the taxes are paid in Canada, yes. Okay?
Next question.
No, it's not okay. It's not okay And he expects people to shut up and listen to me. The taxes were paid. No, they weren't paid. Not your tax, not your corporate taxes. No. And we're not accepting this explanation because what you gave us was a bullshit word salad. And that's all you can ever come up with when you're asked tough questions. You're an ineffective, weak leader who's been drawing the public dime for your entire life. You say you've never been in politics, man. Yeah, you've been in politics your whole life, just a different form. You're an unelected bureaucrat.
Mr. Carney, Mackenzie Gray with Global News. Just on your personal assets, do you have any, in Stripe and Brookfield, do you have any equity, stock options, or anticipate any future payments from either two of those companies?
So the first thing to say with respect to my personal assets is I have complied with all of the rules. In fact, I've over-complied with all of the rules in advance. So months and months and months in advance, and put in place both divestitures. So I actually don't own directly any stocks in those companies, but since I had worked at those companies, I put in place ethical screens. So my approach to public life, and I've been in public life for more than 2 decades, is to meet all the standards and surpass the standards with the highest integrity. And my record, you can look at it, my track record is that as Governor of the Bank of Canada and other roles internationally. So I comply with the rules. Pierre Poilievre has had 927 days to get his security clearance and still hasn't bothered to do that. And I think it shows a fundamental difference in approach. I more than comply in advance. He never complies.
Of course, the truth is he doesn't comply. And why do you think Pierre Poilievre hasn't got the security clearance? And what does that security clearance have to do with Mark Carney's finances? Listen to what Tom Mulcair has to say. He's a fairly objective voice. I don't always agree with Tom Mulcair. I didn't agree with him as the leader of the NDP. But actually, he had more common sense as the leader of the NDP at that time than Justin Trudeau did.
Well, I think that Pierre Poilievre is right now, and he has always been right when he has refused these so-called security briefings because it would require him to say that he wouldn't do his job. The leader of the official opposition, His Majesty's loyal opposition, has a job under our Constitution to hold the government to account. And it's not true that because somebody in the security apparatus says, well, if you want this information, you're going to have to promise never to use it, that means that a leader of the opposition is being irresponsible if he doesn't take the bait. I would never have accepted to do that. When there were serious security issues, you know what used to happen? Stephen Harper, respecting constitutional convention, would call me. His staff would set it up, and once I was at a wedding, and they tracked me down because he wanted to share with me some important information that he knew would be in the news in the next couple of days, and he wanted me to have it. And it's a clear understanding that in your role, when you're being shared information like that by the Prime Minister, you're going to hold on to it. You're not going to go and blab it at a press conference. So I do think that this is a bit of a mugs game that they're playing right now with Poilievre. I'm not saying that there isn't somebody somewhere who heard something about the leadership race, but what is it going to prove, that Poilievre won by 67% and not 68%?
That's precisely it. So Mulcair has some real good points here. But Mark Carney needs a majority. And here he is again in Kitchener-Waterloo yesterday.
I got a question. Who's ready? Who's ready? Who's ready to stand up for Canada? Who's ready? Who's ready to help the Liberal Party win the most consequential election in our lifetimes? I feel good. Look. Majority would be more consequential. We need a majority. We need a majority because we need big changes. We need big changes in this country. That's why I put my hand up as when I first went to run for Liberal leaders.
Oh, he needs a majority because he needs big changes. Mm-hmm. He represents change. I'm sorry. You have been part of the Trudeau government for the last 9.5 years. You don't represent change. You're not change. You're not an outsider. You're an insider. You know who's fighting? And don't tell me you're fighting for Canada. And look at this silly Canada Strong sign in front of him. That's almost blasphemous. How can he possibly pretend he's fighting for Canada? He won't even sit down with Donald Trump, who doesn't want to take his phone calls. You know, he won't even talk to anybody else in the Trump administration. Okay, the president won't talk to you. Try J.D. Vance, the vice president. Try the Commerce Secretary. Try the Secretary of the Treasurer. Try somebody. But stop posturing like you're a tough guy when you're not. You know who's fighting for Canada? Alberta Premier Daniel
To the
Smith.
U.S. yet again to try and speak to Americans, this time through the second largest podcaster in the world, whose audience is made up of exactly the people we need to persuade to convince their president to change course on tariffs against Canada. And what does Team Carney want me to do? They want me to abandon my post, remain in Alberta, and do absolutely nothing to defend our province. They want me to cower in the face of Eastern media pundits and politicians who favor political grandstanding to effective diplomacy. I'm fiercely criticized for going into the lion's den to change the hearts and minds of the very Americans that we need on Canada's side to avoid a trade war with the most powerful economy on earth. They want this lady and Alberta to just sit down and shut up. Well, here is my response to that. I will not be silent. Alberta will not be silent. We will not be pushed around and called traitors for merely having the courage to actually do something about our nation's and province's predicament other than merely indulging in self-righteous tantrums. And I, for one, will never be silenced by the party in Ottawa that has sold out our beloved province for the last 10 years with the help of their NDP collaborators.
NDP collaborators. Daniel Smith's going back to the U.S. to get on the podcast to talk about why we got to stop the trade war, why we have to negotiate, why we have to get back some common sense here. That's who's fighting for Canada. And yeah, she's been called a traitor by some idiots in the Liberal Party. She was accused of interfering, asking Donald Trump to interfere in the federal election because she said maybe it's a good time to stop talking about tariffs because you're helping the Liberal Party. And they know that Donald Trump is helping the Liberal Party. They have been wanting Donald Trump to have a trade war for 3 months because they want to run against Donald Trump. It helps the Liberal Party. They've been using the same strategy. And this is why Mark Carney just talks tough, gets up there and says, we're going to get Donald Trump. Just elect me as prime minister. Just give us a majority government and I'll get real tough with Donald Trump. Yeah. And it's all insane posturing. We did a story yesterday, and I have to find this for the post-millennial, based on Mark Carney's little trip to China. A slow boat to China. And of course, he went to Beijing and he got a $2.76 million loan from the Chinese central bank. This was hitherto virtually unknown. But read our deep dive all about Mark Carney in China. Mark Carney, who wants the Chinese yuan to replace the US dollar as the global currency. There he is, being appointed as the chief honcho in the Liberal Party. There he is in October 2024 going to Beijing, supposedly because he's representing the Trudeau government, but he's really representing Brookfield Assets management, and he's really looking for a loan. That's why he's there. And of course, the questions. I want to thank, before I forget, my good friend Andy Lee, who is one of the most incredible citizen journalists out there. I've known Andy Lee for several years, going back to the Freedom Convoy. She does remarkable work on China and Chinese election interference, Chinese financial interference. And read her work on X. She's fantastic. And Andy, thank you for leading us in the right direction for this. And of course, the Chinese media is asking these questions. Does his arrival mean that there will be a new breakthrough in the cooperation between China and Canada in the financial field? Or is he there? Or is he there something else? Or is there something else to this meeting? The Chinese media got it. The Chinese media understood what was going on. And Bloomberg reported it, even though Mark Carney is the chairman of Bloomberg as well. And of course, the question is this why Mark Carney does nothing about the Chinese tariffs that are hitting our farmers right in the behind, hitting them hard? 100% tariffs on canola oil and peas. You say, well, what the hell is canola oil? It's the cash crop that farmers need to survive in many cases. It's like tobacco or cotton used to be. The cash crop where you can always rely on to make a profit. That's what that's about. Now we got a video here. I just have to I'm going to have to download this one because I didn't do it at the right time. Here we go. This is Mark Carney's visit to China. Here he is, glad handing everybody, having a great time. Mark Carney just loves to be in China.
Decide to link some of those voluntary carbon markets on the basis of the following things. High integrity in supply, so there's no greenwashing. High integrity in demand, which means that the only companies that can buy these credits are companies that are getting their absolute emissions down before they buy a credit. So they have to have ambition in their own credits. And then this market infrastructure, the plumbing, if you will, being high integrity. That's the first aspect. Last point, crucial, is just like with the post-financial crisis financial reforms, which we all participated in through the Financial Stability Board, we negotiated global standards and guidelines, but then we all went home and translated those into our own local standards. They weren't exactly the same, but they were on a common base. And it respects the sovereignty and the differences in different jurisdictions. And if we're going to have a global carbon market or major voluntary carbon markets linked, it has to be locally anchored, so tailored to local circumstance, and globally connected. And it's exactly, and this is my last point, it's exactly what the theme of this forum is you have trust and confidence because you've co-developed, you have transparency in the application, and then we can move forward on that. So this is, I think it's possible, but it's over the course of the next 12 months or so to the Brazilian COP that we will determine this.
Okay, so was that Mark Carney number one or number two? Mark Carney number one being the chairman of Brookfield Assets Management, and Mark Carney number two being the chief economic advisor to Justin Trudeau. Which one was it? What was he there for? Well, obviously he was there to get a loan. And that's what he came back with. And did you get that part about there's no greenwashing going on here? All these companies have to be true net zero. Isn't that interesting? Because Mark Carney's company wasn't exactly true net zero, because they invested billions of dollars in coal and oil sands projects around the world, including pipelines around the world. That's the hypocrisy you have with this excuse for a leader. It's nauseating. Now, I played this last clip yesterday, but a lot of people didn't see it because I had the interview yesterday with Richard Gillette, that courageous fisherman from Newfoundland. And a lot of people thought, hey, when the interview was over, the show was over. No, it wasn't. And by the way, tomorrow I've got a farmer on, a Western farmer, who's going to be talking about exactly how the Chinese tariffs are affecting him and other farms, and how it's affecting the livelihood, and how Mark Carney doesn't give a damn because he doesn't want to hurt China. He doesn't want to talk back to China because he owes China. He's in the pocket of China, and he has been for a long time. Mark Carney is China's man. He's the Manchurian candidate, actually. That's what Mark Carney is. But here's Poilievre ripping off the lid to Mark Carney's little game.
Yes, sir.
So, Globe and Mail has done a story on election interference on Conservative leadership campaign. What are your comments on that?
Well, first of all, let's quote from that Globe and Mail article. I'm going to quote here. CSIS also did not have evidence that Mr. Poilievre or members of his inner circle were aware of these alleged actions. Then I'm going to quote the Hogue Commission, and I quote, "The Commission heard testimony about allegations of the government India interference in the Conservative Party leadership race. CSIS witnesses noted that they had no reason to believe the impacted candidates would have been aware of the alleged support." Let's be honest. I won the leadership fair and square. Even my political competitors, like Mr. Patrick Brown, have publicly testified under oath that that was the case. But I'm glad that the Liberals put this attack out today. Really glad. Because there's something that's really been worrying me. After Justin Trudeau named Mark Carney his economic advisor, giving him massive power over public policy in Canada, Mr. Carney went over for meetings in Beijing where he just had secret talks with the deputy governor of the Chinese central bank. 2 weeks later, Brookfield got a $250 million loan. What did they talk about? What did Mr. Carney in his role as Trudeau's economic advisor offer of China? Why would he be having secret meetings with top government-controlled bankers about getting a $250 million loan while he was supposed to be acting in Canada's interest as the Prime Minister's economic advisor? Why would he be collaborating with a hostile foreign regime that we have since learned executed 4 Canadians and took numerous Canadians hostage for a lengthy period of time? And given that Mr. Carney knows that he still owns massive financial interests in Brookfield, which owes a $250 million to a Chinese state-controlled bank, how do we know he's not going to act against our interests in favor of his financial interests? Why didn't he stand in front of this microphone and confess to Canadians that he owes the Chinese government that kind of money? Is this why he's covering up his financial interests? And given that China has murdered our people, taken our people hostage, how is he ever going to stand up to foreign interference when he is so financially compromised? We have never in our history had a weak, out-of-touch leader so terribly compromised and conflicted, whose interests go against our national interests. And I call on Mr. Carney right now to come before a microphone today and explain if this loan is still in place and if he still has those Brookfield assets that he had up until a few weeks ago. Because we cannot trust someone. Could you imagine, while you're supposed to be advising Canada's Prime Minister on the well-being of our economy, going to a foreign regime that had executed Canadian citizens, taken Canadians hostage, that it had already been public that they had interfered in multiple elections. They've done incursions into our northern waters. Mark Carney will never be able to protect our national interests because he has massive financial conflicts of interest overseas. What we need now is not to give the Liberals a 4th term with a weak and compromised leader. What we need is a prime minister who will put Canada first for a change.
Yeah, and if you missed that yesterday, I put it on again for you to see. This is the depth of hypocrisy. The depth of hypocrisy with Mark Carney. Everything about him smells. I really think you needed to see that. I'll be right back with some concluding remarks. Yes, as I said, look at the store before I say, and we've got some great merchandise there, and I appreciate somebody emailed me the other day saying they really, really liked the mug they had, and we've gotten lots of great comments about the hoodies with the I am a Canadian, a free Canadian hoodie. People love that, and I think it's wonderful stuff. So please take some time to have a look. I'll be back again tomorrow with a Western farmer who's going to tell us about how he will be affected by these canola tariffs and how he is being affected by these canola tariffs and why Mark Carney is doing nothing about it, just like he's not even talking to the Americans. He'll do that someday. When you give him that majority, he'll think about it, but give him that majority first. We're going to deny him that majority. You ain't getting that legitimacy, that validation, Mark Carney. Go home, Mark Carney, because your home's not Canada. You're a globalist. Go back to the UK. Go back to Europe. That's where you belong. Thanks for watching today, folks. Resolve to resist. Keep on fighting. I'll be back tomorrow with more of the news you need to know. I'm David Krayden.